This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Coming up on this week's programme, we discuss the proposed tax reforms which will shortly go through Parliament, and it seems that the super wealthy will be getting a pretty good break.
You're right that this 20,000 euro increase for the highest rate is a bit generous for the high income people. That's true.
We'll also hear about a protest that took place outside the presidential palace recently.
I've just done reading 585 pages of killed children by Israel's genocidal state.
There are tax reforms in the pipeline, which our Parliament is going to be discussing very shortly. And I've read a lot in the media about whether or not they actually deal with the issues that we should be dealing with for the good of all Cypriot citizens. So it's a pleasure to welcome to this week's programme the Dean of the Faculty of Economics and Management at the University of Cyprus. He is Sophronis Kleridis. Sophronis, many thanks for joining me. Now then, there's so many ideas in these reforms, it's difficult to know where to start. But I did read a very interesting article in the press recently, and three main points were raised. So perhaps we can start there. And the first one was the fact that the writer said that the reforms were not directed at meeting the medium to longer term government revenue and expenditure needs, and geared primarily to appealing to the short-term interests of larger businesses in particular and households. So what do you say to that?
First of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm not sure I would agree with that statement. I mean, it's a big claim that we could be discussing for a while. I think, first of all, what the tax reform tries to do is remain fiscally neutral, which means that the goal is for it to raise the same amount of revenue as the current regime, not increase government spending and not decrease government spending. I mean, one could say that it's not a radical reform. And that's probably true. I would agree with that. It doesn't make radical changes. It makes a number of changes. Some of them are fairly important, some of them are a bit more marginal, but overall I would say that it's not really a radical overhaul of the tax system, let's say. So if somebody was looking for that, then they might be disappointed.
Don't we need a radical overhaul of the tax system? I mean, it hasn't been changed for 20 years or so?
Right, yes. 2002, I think, was there. So it was more than. Well, I'm not sure. Does that necessarily mean that we need a radical tax reform? I don't know. It definitely, economies change over the period of time, and you need to re-examine, reconsider your rates, your brackets. The household part of the equation is fairly straightforward. There's income tax. There are the income tax brackets, and then there are the rates for each bracket. So you can give some exemptions for to help families with children and so forth. So that part is fairly straightforward in the sense that it's not very complicated. Of course, you can have a lot of discussion about what the right bracket is and what the right rate is, and what the right amount of support for families with small children is, and so forth. And there's no correct answer to any of those questions. It's a matter of what society will end up with during this, as a result of these debates.
Okay, but you did say that it was about the tax brackets as well. And you said that there have been changes. Obviously, there have in the world economy since the last overhaul, as it were, of our tax system. One of which, in terms of brackets, is when you start paying tax. Now, inflation has had a huge impact on that, hasn't it? And I think that although they've raised the threshold at which you start paying tax, it's nowhere near keeping up with those who have moved up a bracket because of inflation.
That is true. That's a point that many people have raised. And it's actually worth noting that the government actually, had before the elections, the president in his program he had promised a bigger increase in this non-taxable income, this floor, and eventually he decided he agreed to make it a smaller increase, which I think, even though I know a lot of people disagree with this, but I think it's the right it was the right thing to do. And the reason I'm saying this is because you can always, of course, argue that we should have a higher non-taxable income, but Cyprus has a very high non-taxable income. It's one of the highest in Europe for sure, probably one of the highest in the world. There are not that many countries where you make 20,000 euros and don't pay any tax. So it was a very high non-taxable income before. Now it's been raised a little bit. I agree with you that in real terms, taking into account inflation, it's actually lower than before. But I think there's something to be said about people paying even a small amount of tax. That's a bit, lower, let's say, income levels, just to be part of the system. I think that there's something to be said about that.
All right, what's to be said about the fact that if we look at the top end of the scale, as far as I understood it, the top rate is something like 35% on incomes exceeding 60,000 euros per annum at the moment. That's now going to be raised to those exceeding 80,000. Suddenly, if you're super wealthy, you're going to get a 20,000 euro leeway until you have to start paying the top rate of tax. What sense does that make?
Yes, that's true. That's a bit generous to those who make. I will agree with you. That's a bit generous to those who make high incomes. Interestingly, I haven't seen that much debate on that. To be honest, I try to follow as much as I can, but there's lots and lots of opinions out there. My impression is that there hasn't been, for some reason, that much discussion of that issue. But it's true. What you say is true. That Cyprus has the higher tax rate of 35% is a little bit on the low end, not too much lower than. Most European countries have the highest rate of around 40, 42, I think. I think the average is about there. So at 35%, Cyprus is a bit lower.
And now they've upped the lowest one that
yes.
you pay it at. So 80,000 euros. They haven't got trouble paying their electricity bills or finding somewhere if they don't own a house to rent. Whereas the poorer people are now going to be, all right, maybe they were in a bracket before and it's changed, but now they're going to be paying more and the rich people are going to be paying less. This does not seem like an equitable form of taxation that would benefit all Cypriots.
Well, I'm not sure why you say poor people would pay more, because, the brackets are going up for everybody. I agree, but you're right that this 20,000 euro increase for the highest rate is a bit generous for the high income people. Yeah, that's true.
It's very generous. Let's talk about the proposals for businesses, because we're always hearing this government say they want to encourage investment and so on and so forth. I think they've got this new idea that if you come back to Cyprus, or if you're a foreigner and you're newly arrived in Cyprus as a business person, you get all sorts of tax breaks there too, don't you?
Yes, and that's one of the issues that I have. Some of the issues that I take issue with, to be honest. And I mean, I'm all for trying to attract talent and foreign investment and so forth. I think we have a tendency to overdo it. The incentives are very generous for those coming back.
50% personal income tax break. Is that for real?
50%, I believe. Yes, I think that exists already. So that's not new.
No, but it's going to carry on. I mean, they've had time to look at it. Surely, if all these new people are arriving from abroad, we could suggest that they don't actually need quite that much of a tax break, do they?
Well, the argument there is that these are people who they're not here right now. We're getting zero from them. So if we offer them some incentives, they would come here, and then we would get something from them. So that's a gain, that's a benefit. So that's the argument, it's a correct argument. Now, on the other hand, other people might say, okay, but people who have been lived here all their lives and make the same income and so forth, they pay a lot more. So that's unfair. That's also a valid argument. So you have to balance. You have to find the right balance between these two. I also tend to think that it's a bit overly generous, to be honest. But like I said, with these things there is never a right answer.
What about things like property tax? We don't seem to tax the wealthy here at all, and a lot of people have many homes or rent them out, they're landlords, whatever, and they seem as well to be not paying possibly what they should be.
Well, yes, property tax is another one of these issues that it gains very little traction in Cyprus. We introduced the property tax in 2013. It was we were forced to, essentially. It was part of the MOU. And we got rid of it as soon as we could. The first thing we did was after the MOU, after we exited the MOU, was basically to repeal the property tax. So there's a very strong lobby, should I call it, of there's a strong alliance of people, groups, parties, whoever, who is very, very much against property tax, which is, from the economic perspective and from the policy perspective, property taxes make sense. That's why most countries have property taxes. The property land is the reason, and this is a bit different. It's a special case of a wealth tax, because property is, land is in scarce. It's in fixed supply. So it makes sense to tax factor of production, which is in fixed supply, especially if it's sitting idle. If somebody owns land and does nothing with it, it's not being used, it's a waste. So from an economic perspective, it makes sense to have a property tax rate, property tax. Most countries have a property tax, but in Cyprus it's something that never really gets in the discussion. I'm pretty sure I know it was discussed a bit during the discussions for this reform also, but again, it doesn't really go very far.
Right, and that all brings us to wealth inequality, because I think it was the World Inequality Report of last year said that 10% of the population owns around 2/3 of the country's net personal wealth. And again, that is showing up a huge discrepancy.
Yes, yes, I'm aware of this. There was also a recent report a couple of weeks ago that came up with another statistic, which was something like Cyprus had the biggest increase. I don't remember the exact number, but Cyprus had a very large increase in the amount of in the wealth of the top 1% of the population, something like that. And okay, I mean, there's an issue with these things. This is definitely. Let me first say that this is definitely one thing that we should be concerned with.
But we haven't seen it being discussed very much in all the chat that we've seen, both in the press and I guess in the parliament, about what should be done on these new reforms.
Okay, well, one issue is the following. It's an issue of trying to make sense of these numbers on inequality. So, for example, this latest statistic that just came out, it shows that the wealth of the top 1% has increased quite a lot. Now, who are these people is a question. And one issue is that these are people who came to Cyprus in the last few years, or very likely. A lot of these people are people who came to Cyprus in the last few years, and they're very wealthy. Okay, so it's not wealth inequality, or not, at least not all of it. It's not wealth inequality that's generated from the sort of, let's say, among local residents. Some of it is, but a lot of it is inequality that's created because some very wealthy people moved to Cyprus. Okay, and it's hard to know how much is because of that and how much is because of actually wealthy Cypriots becoming even wealthier. To figure that out, you need to have good data and somebody to sit down and analyze that.
And has the finance ministry not bothered to do that? I mean, it seems extraordinary that they haven't looked very carefully into all of these issues before proposing whatever they want to change.
Well, I think, I'm not sure what they did, but I think, the prevailing sort of attitude in Cyprus among the economic, the professionals who are the people who are working with the foreign firms, the accountants, the lawyers, and also I think among the politicians probably also, the prevailing attitude is that it's good to attract wealthy people because that brings money in the economy and generates some good jobs, and money gets circulated in the economy, and that's good for everybody. And there's definitely some element of truth to that. But there's also some side effects, some possible negative effects. One of which is the rise of real estate prices that are not getting enough attention. They were not getting enough attention. Now people have become more aware of this, and so now there is a lot of discussion about real estate prices. But it took us too long to realize that this was a problem.
So don't we need to do something rather quickly about that? Because there are an awful lot of Cypriots, aren't there, who can't afford even to rent a place.
Yes, that's an issue. I think, and the problem is from both sides of the market. I mean, there's increased demand because of the influx of all these people with high incomes who want to buy, and so prices go up. And also there's not enough supply is limited. Part of the market is sort of geared towards the high income, high price housing, because that's where the money is. So there's not enough housing for regular people being built. So yes, something needs to be done about this. I think on both sides of the. I mean, there are benefits to attracting people here to come, but also everything in good measure.
Yes, and I think the other thing, but we can't really go into this now, is that the more of these rich people come, they usually want swimming pools. We have a water shortage. I'm sure they use much more electricity than I do. We have a problem with supplying energy. So we have to look surely at the whole picture. And we hear about social housing, but if the government is spending the money that it has on things that benefit the average citizen rather than just the wealthy, could we turn this around?
Well, I mean, you can always turn this around, but it requires some planning and some decisions to be made. I mean, first of all, you have to recognize the problem. And at least now I think we are recognizing, that, especially with the housing, that that's an issue. You also raised the issue of electricity usage and water usage and so forth. And then I would actually extend that argument. That argument also applies to tourism, which is a very different thing. But again, our goal is to bring in as many tourists as possible and get as much income. But then, do we price? They use water, they use electricity. Do we price it properly? Do we take into account all the environmental burden that all these tourists impose? I'm pretty sure we don't. So it's another one of those things that we look at the benefit side or the revenue side of things, but we kind of not very so good at looking at calculating the costs involved with a lot of our.
What would you suggest we do, Sophronis? I mean, there's no quick fix, but there must be some priorities that could be laid down and started working on so that we start to address these problems, because they're only going to get worse.
Yeah. Some things are beginning to be done on the supply side. The government, for a long time, there was no housing being built from this government organization that is responsible for building, affordable housing, and for a long time it wasn't doing anything in the previous decade. So now they're actually beginning to build. It's very small scale, but you need to expand that. I think we need to build either through zoning decisions or providing the right incentives to build affordable housing. In other countries, also people live in apartments. It's perfectly fine, and that's in Cyprus. We got used to all living in a house and having a yard, but that's just too expensive. So we should have smaller houses, affordable housing. There are ways to do this with the right incentives, the right policies, the right zoning, and so it should really be on the supply side. So one thing I would caution against, because a lot of times people ask for the government should subsidize buying of houses and so forth. So that's not a very good idea generally, because that does nothing to lower prices. It actually is going to, if you subsidize the purchase of housing, that's just going to keep raising prices. No, so you have to work on the supply side to try to increase the supply of housing, so that to keep the prices down, so that people can afford.
Well, I don't know how this is going to work out. It would be very interesting to see how the Parliament reacts when this comes up for voting on. And I guess we may well talk again when we see exactly what it's going to cost Joe Average and me and you, Sophronis. But many thanks for going through it with us. That is Sophronis Clearidis, Dean of the Faculty of Economics and Management at the University of Cyprus. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rosie.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
And finally, I went down a couple of weeks ago to an area outside the presidential palace where a small group of people were reading through the names of all the children killed in Gaza. They had started with those who were 0 years old. When I got there, nearly at the end of their week-long protest, they were up to people aged 19.
Osama Muslim Awad Ermilad, 19 years old. Abdel Rahim Ali Ahmed Rehan, 19 χρονών. Hamdan Fatih Hamdan Khedi, 19 years old. Mohamed Basel Faik Al-Rifati, 19 years old.
You've been here, I think, all week.
Yes.
Tell us exactly what you're doing and why.
Well, it's been 700 days since Israel has started its slaughter, genocide on the people of Gaza in Palestine. I'm not talking about 7 years before this or the West Bank. Especially in Gaza, there's a genocide going on. And all countries around the world, including ours, European Union, Western countries, are going along with it. It's unbelievable. As normal people, citizens, people of the world, we feel we have to do something. And we've protested, we've signed petitions, we've done most of the things that we feel we should have done up until now. And this is another way of protesting, a peaceful way of protesting, by mourning the registered 60,000 people who have been murdered by Israel. We're doing
63,000 at the last count, and that's
Yes.
only the people that are
Who
not
are
buried
registered,
under
yes.
the rubble.
Yes. So last year, The Lancet published an article saying that the estimated number of deaths due to Israel's genocide in Gaza is estimated to be at least 200,000. That was published last year, I think in June, probably submitted in May. So probably the numbers, actual numbers are somewhere around 500 to 600,000. I don't know. But not even one person should be dead because of Israel. Not even one life should be lost. So actually, one person or 500,000, Israel does not have the right to do this to innocent civilians. I'm saying innocent. They are all innocent. They are all civilians suffering because of Israel. And why are we here?
What reaction have you had? I mean, I've heard a couple of cars beeping, which is the first time when I've been to these demonstrations that I've been aware of some sort of support from the general public, because generally speaking here in Cyprus, we've been very apathetic about it, which I find extraordinary when you think that part of our country is also occupied.
Yeah, well, a lot of cars just pass by and look. We do have people showing support, showing the peace sign, saying I'm proud of you or I support you. We do have a crowd who support us, and some people pull over, come and ask us questions, want to support us. We have had people, the delivery people on their motorbikes coming and saying, can we contribute, make a donation? We are not collecting donations, but people are stopping and asking, can we donate to Gaza? But we have had people rolling down their window and giving us the middle finger. We've had people giving us the middle finger every single day. I filmed one of them. And it's really, really, I'm really ashamed of this situation. People still driving past and saying Cyprus, like why are we supporting Palestine? Why aren't we doing this for Cyprus? And
for Ukraine, the president said the other day, which is quite extraordinary. But let's go down that line. Just tell me which organisation you're from that's organising this, or is it an individual?
Well, individuals from different groups came together to organise this. I'm from BDS Cyprus and United for Palestine Nicosia, and one of our organisers is totally independent from any group, and another one is from AFOA.
I've just done reading 585 pages of killed children by Israel's genocidal state.
Do you have any idea how long it would take you to get to the end of that book? You're finishing tonight, but you won't get even halfway through.
Yes, and also we don't have all the children that died, that were killed, because there's so many children unregistered and cannot be found under rubble, or they're completely vanished from bombs.
So have you any idea how many weeks it would take you to get through this?
It took the whole week. for like 7 a.m. in the morning to 7 in the evening, reading continuously.
Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.